now call the June 6, 2023 Finance Committee meeting to order at 6:45. Chair would entertain a motion for the approval of the claims.
Your Honor, we make a motion to pay the following $711,359.73 on to be paid, and manual checks of $8,000. Elan credit card in the amount of $9,647.37. Payroll and liabilities for May 19th in the amount of $469,887.35 for a total of $1,198,894.45.
Second.
Thank you. Are there any amendments or discussion on the claims?
I have one. Kyle, could you explain to me the pavement reservation for a total of $245,011.64 by 71 Construction, please?
Yes, Madam Chair, Councilman, that's one of our 1% projects, and if it's okay, I'd love to highlight Brian for the work that he's put forward on this. This is part of the pavement preservation project that we have going around town. But Brian, if you want to maybe highlight a little bit of what the team's been doing.
Thank you, Your Honor. Councilman Larson. This is basically the first portion of the pavement preservation project, the full depth repairs on East Park, and then over on Forest so far. They're starting that project this week. This amount of money is included in next year's budget. However, we had unexpended revenues still in the 1% money from the current fiscal year budget. So we're able to pay them for the work that they've done thus far without having to make them wait.
So is this pothole or a hard surface cover?
This is actually full depth reclamation on potholed areas.
Wow, very good. Thank you.
Madam Chairwoman and Councilman, this is part of the project that you awarded in the amount of $721,000. So as Mr. Elgison explained, this is the first payment of many to come. You'll see more slurry seals as pavement preservation, but he and his team identified areas that really weren't suitable for a slurry seal and required full depth, and so they went to work and got that done.
Are there any other questions, amendments, discussion? In that case, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passed. Is there anything additional that the committee needs to review or to discuss?
Your Honor, I just also wanted to mention that there is a claim in the finance packet for $24,105 for Viper Underground, and that includes the pay app and the final retainage for the Cowboy Lane Waterline project.
Okay, thank you. If there's no other business, we'll adjourn at 6:48.
I call the June 6, 2023 regular meeting of the Riverton City Council to order at 7 p.m. Would Councilmember Bailey lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, and then I will give us the invocation.
And to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Heavenly Father, we are grateful for the opportunity to meet here together and speak about the needs of the city. We ask that it please bless us as we do so. We will have our minds enlightened, and that we will be able to say and consider and bring up things that would benefit our city and help us to do things that will strengthen our city and help us to have a safer place to live, and a place that can be a place that we're proud of, to raise our children and to spend time. We're so grateful for the many efforts of those who serve our community, both at home and abroad. We're grateful for our military and ask that it please bless them as they serve, as well as our local law enforcement and first responders, and those who serve as our city staff and our employees. We ask that it please bless them with safety and with the ability to do their jobs well and to represent the city and our community well. We say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
All right, would the city clerk please conduct a roll call?
Mr. Honor, Councilwoman Carla Borders.
Here.
Councilman Lindsay Cox.
Here.
Councilman Mike Bailey.
Here.
Councilman Dean Peranto.
Here.
Councilman Kyle Larson.
Here.
Councilman Christy Salisbury.
Here.
Mayor Tim Hancock.
I am here. I declare that we have a quorum. The chair would entertain a motion for the approval of the agenda, also with the addition of an open container permit to the consent agenda. This is for applicant is Jason Hawk, Bar 10, Sugar Beats concert on June 17th.
So moved.
Second.
Councilman Larson with the motion, Councilman Bailey with the second. Any discussion or amendments? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
I vote aye. Any opposed say nay. Motion passes. Communication from the floor. Anyone in the audience, if you'd like to address the council regarding an item that's scheduled for a public hearing, you'll be given an opportunity to speak during that public hearing. If you want to speak on a different item that's not listed, I'd ask you to please come up and address the council from the podium, and to identify yourself for the record, as well as any organization of which you're a part that you represent. Generally speaking, I'd ask that we keep comments to 5 minutes for individuals, or 10 minutes that you could split up between yourselves if you're a part of an organization. So if you'd like to speak, please come on up and introduce yourself and say what you'd like to say.
Tom Earhart, 807 Riverview Road. Come back down to the council again to see if we can get anything done about the speeders, the stop sign violators, the red light runners. And I know that you guys are working on it, but it's been up to 6 months, 4 months with the new chief probably, and there still is nothing happening. And the only time they stop anymore is if there's traffic coming by, and sometimes they don't even stop then. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Earhart. And you've got the chief as a listening ear right over here. All right, go ahead.
So I'm Carl Falcon. I live in precinct 3-4, and I understand you want a 5-minute time limit. I tried to schedule a 10-minute time on the agenda, so please bear with me here. But I have a presentation I made to these the Fremont County Commissioners about a year ago, and I'd like to make it here again in a little revised form to address the emergency plan, because the same plan that the county uses is the one that the city has adopted as well. Before I go into that, I just wanted to explain why I'm holding this book here. It's called At the Hinge of History, a reporter's story. It's written by my great uncle, Joseph C. Harsh. And in it is a very interesting story. I very quickly summarize it. But on December 6th, 1941. He was in Pearl Harbor. And as a war correspondent, he was interviewing the then Admiral Husband Kimmel, who was the Navy's Chief of Staff for the Pacific Theater. And in his interview, he asked the Admiral if he expected war with Japan. And the Admiral was very direct and said no, and then he explained why. And I bring that up because I'm addressing the City Council on a time when we are also on the hinge of history. And I do that because I want to introduce my presentation on why our emergency plan should address a nuclear attack. So the current plan has 13 chapters, and chapter 13 is the one that I want to talk about because none of these address a nuclear weapons or terrorist strike in practical terms. And I can say that from experience because I've been a first responder for nearly 20 years, and I participated in large-scale disasters such as Hurricane Katrina and Hurricane Ike back in Texas. The public safety and security one is basically, in summary, is about communication. And I give you the text here. I'm not going to go and read it all. But the short of it is that the entire response is limited to collection and dissemination of information, and it entirely depends on volunteer donations to address any physical needs. And why is preparation important? As I said, I was involved in both the Katrina and the Ike disaster responses. In the first case, they had a plan, but it was a paper plan. It wasn't practical. The results were horrendous. It was again, when they did it again in Ike, they had a good plan. The results were amazing. And the difference was a life lesson right there. But the open question here is, in such a situation, who will be the volunteer and where will the needed resources come? How will they be delivered? And very problematic is that what we know about nuclear strikes is that it produces a large EMP. And from what we know of the aerial test by the Soviet Union, it will pretty much wipe out the power grid. So if we're depending on anything that requires power, at least for several days, forget about it. What is the probability of a nuclear weapon strike in Wyoming? The probability is low, but it's not improbable. Wyoming is one of 5 sparsely populated states in which the bulk of America's nuclear missile silos are located. And these are called sponge states. They are prime targets to draw missile attacks away from populated areas. If you didn't know that, now you do. I hope you still sleep well at night. The probability of nuclear strike is interesting here because if Wyoming were a nation, it would be one of the world's major nuclear powers. So consider that as we go along. There are 16 ICBM facilities throughout Wyoming. Each one supervises 10 missile silos with the Minuteman III rockets in them. Most of these are around F.E. Warren Base near Cheyenne, and many more of them are across the border in South Dakota. The only known potential target in Fremont County is a NORAD station, which is on Boise Peak. This is roughly 45 miles from Riverton. So if you look at the map, the distances from Boise Peak to Riverton is about 32 miles, and the distance, for example, to Lander is about 51 miles. The typical nuclear warhead that the Russians would use in this case would be the R-36M2. It's a 750 kiloton warhead, and the blast radius is probably only about between 3 and 4 miles. Severe damage would be up to 11 miles. But here in Riverton, we would still suffer moderate damage, ionizing radiation, possibility of permanent blindness, and the real issue here, radioactive fallout. Now, if we go to NATO, it's 30 countries, and Article 5 of the NATO North Atlantic Treaty basically says that an attack on one member is an attack on all. So if one country was attacked, all of them would be obliged to defend them. This is more details for your late night reading. And then this is a list of the current situation here. Tensions are building and risks are increasing. I'm not going to go through every detail here. I'm sure that you can be provided with a copy of it. The two things I want to point out is that we already have put 100,000 troops in Eastern Europe. We even have put in 1,000 troops in Georgia, which is not a NATO member. And we've had recent exercises here in Wyoming. For example, there was our National Guard trained with Alpine Guard in Colorado. It's a mass casualty simulation. And just this April, the United States Air Force Special Operations conducted exercise Agile Chariot on Highway 287 right here between Riverton and Hudson. So it's coming home. One thing that is really telling is that last year the Department of Health spent $290 million to order a drug Nplate, which is roughly 200,000 doses of medication used for radiation sickness. Wonder what that's for. What are the likely targets and fallout? So again, there's more late night reading for you, but this map here shows you the prime targets that we understood, and then this is a probable fallout map. As you can see, Wyoming is right in the middle of it, and we can certainly expect to see some of that in our own backyards if it happens. Is a nuclear attack survivable? My experience with the county commissioners is their thought was it's not. But if you actually look at the research, here in Fremont County, we're looking at 60-80%, or sorry, a 20 to 40% survival rate, and it could be higher. So 80 to 90% of the people here in Riverton and most of the infrastructure would probably be not directly affected until we have fallout. So yes, it's quite survivable, but preparation is very important. Unfortunately, the plans do not address these things, and even the Wyoming Ready app does not address it. The way it could be mitigated is by advanced preparation, largely focusing on educating the public, letting them know that they're on their own, mitigating the likely effects of the attack, such as preparing fallout shelters near population centers, and encouraging those citizens who are not close to population centers to prepare, stockpiling essential food and water for up to 2 weeks, and obtaining radiation monitoring equipment and having basic medical supplies on hand. Because the plan is to communicate what to do after the effect, with most of the communications likely down at that point. That would be problematic, so it would be better to do this before we go there. Is there funding for this? I've looked at the city budget and the county budget, and there is no funding there for any of this. So funding would have to come from other sources. The Department of Homeland Security has over $1 billion in grant funding available. Unfortunately, we've missed the application dates for 2023. FEMA and other agencies have various grant programs, and private foundations also have grants. The conclusion is that although the probability of a nuclear attack, either in declared war or a terrorist act, is low, it can't be ruled out. And such attack is most likely survivable for most of Fremont County and Riverton residents in the short term. The long-term consequences depend on preparation. And while funding for such preparation is not currently budgeted, basic preparation, such as planning, coordination, training, and public education, are not exorbitantly expensive and can have a significant impact on the response and recovery periods. Grants may be found that can fund essential preparations and communications, and therefore this scenario should be addressed in the county plan, which is also the city plan. Any questions?
A lot to take in.
Yeah.
There's a lot. Do you have a copy of that you can send to Mr. Butterfield that can disseminate it to the city council?
Yes, actually I sent a copy to Max earlier, and I'm sure he can distribute it, or I can also send it directly to you and Kyle.
That sounds fine. Have you spoken at all with Mylan Vinich, or?
I have. Mylan is right now currently quite busy with flood risk preparation and mitigation, and he said he wouldn't be able to address this in the near future.
That's a little bit more, I think, clear and present danger, I guess, that the county's having to deal with. But I appreciate you coming in and appreciate the information, and thank you.
Welcome.
All right. Anyone else? All right, would the city clerk please read the consent agenda items by title only with the addition of the open container permit application for June 17th?
Yes, Your Honor. Approval of the minutes, May 16th, 2023, regular council meeting. Approval of the minutes, May 23rd, 2023, council work session. Approval of the minutes, June 6th, 2023, finance committee meeting. Approval of the finance committee recommendations for June 6th, 2023. Approval of the municipal court report for the month of May 2023. An open container permit application submitted by Ann Callback for a memorial barbecue at Teeter Park on June 10th, 2023 from 4 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. A second open container permit application submitted by Mary Lou Vaughn for a family gathering at Monroe Park on July 12, 2023 from 3 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. In addition of the open container permit application submitted by Bar 10 for Sugar Beats concert at City Park on June 17th, 2023 from 4 p.m. to 11 p.m.
Thank you. Are there any items requiring further discussion?
Your Honor, the Finance Committee met earlier this evening and agreed to consideration of claims to be paid in the amount of $711,359.73, manual checks in the amount of $8,000, the Elon credit card in the amount of $9,647.37, payroll and liabilities for 5/19/23 in the amount of $469,887.35, for a total of $1,198,894.45.
Just was reading those numbers.
Yes.
Thank you. Chair would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Councilwoman Cox with the motion, Councilman Bailey with the second. Any other discussion on the motion?
Your Honor, I'd like to abstain from any warrants paid to Traveling Computers and Wyonet.
Noted.
Your Honor,
Yes, sir.
I would also abstain from any Bailey Enterprises items on the Finance Committee report.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
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 I vote aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion passes. Public hearing and consideration, fireworks permit application, Riverton Little League, June 22nd, 2023. City Clerk's report, please.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mayor and council, before you tonight for your consideration is a fireworks permit application submitted by Riverton Little League for their championship celebration on June 22nd, 2023 from 9 p.m. to 10:30 p.m. The applicant has met the conditions of the permit application. Therefore, staff recommends approval of the fireworks permit application as submitted.
Thank you. The chair would entertain a motion to open the public hearing.
So moved.
Second?
Motion by Councilwoman, Councilman Larson. Second by Councilwoman Borders. I don't know why your name escaped me for just a split second there. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion passes. I declare the public hearing open. This hearing will be conducted in accordance with state statutes, other applicable laws. I would ask these individuals wishing to address the council to approach the podium and identify yourself for the record. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to speak about fireworks, June 22nd, 2023? Riverton Little League.
Your Honor, seeing none, I would move we close the public hearing.
So moved.
Motion by Councilman Bailey, second by Councilman Larson. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. Motion passed. Chair would entertain, I declare the public hearing now closed. You had your chance. Chair would entertain a motion to approve the fireworks permit application for Riverton Little League on June 22nd, 2023.
So moved.
Second.
Councilwoman Cox with the motion, Councilman Larson with the second. Discussion on the motion. Was it you?
Yeah.
Okay, good. See somebody out of the corner of my eye, and I think I recognize your voice. Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. Motion passes. All right. Citizen Board Appointment Edge Committee. City Administrators report on this, Mr. Butterfield?
Yeah, Your Honor, just briefly, we have the privilege of having the Evolve, Diversify, and Grow Our Economy Committee. They help govern the administration of the 0.5% tax. And when I say govern, really, they are the entity that receives applications and then make recommendations to you as the final authority, as the governing body. Unfortunately, Marissa Selvig submitted her resignation from the committee, and you now have the opportunity to appoint a replacement. There are 2 alternates serving on the committee, and as Mayor Hancock and I have previously discussed, it's proposed that Cody Beers, who's currently serving as the alternate, be appointed to fill the vacancy left by Marissa Selvig.
Thank you. And just so the council knows, I spoke with Mr. Beers. He was very willing to move into being a regular member of the Edge Committee. That would mean, of course, we've got a vacancy for an alternate that we are currently soliciting applications for. So the chair would entertain a motion to approve the appointment of Cody Beers to the Edge Committee.
So moved.
Second.
Councilwoman Borders with the motion, Councilman Peranto with the second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. I vote aye. Motion passes. Public hearing and consideration of ordinance 23006, first reading, underage purchase, use, or possession of tobacco. City administrators report, please.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'll be brief on the background on this because a lot of this was covered and discussed by the council during the May 9th work session. In brief, the city has an ordinance that states that no person under the age of 18 shall purchase tobacco products, possess tobacco products, or vaping devices. We have definition in the code about what tobacco products are, and they say anything containing tobacco leaf or nicotine, regardless of origin, including or without limitation, cigarettes, cigars, pipe tobacco, snuff, chewing tobacco, or dipping tobacco. As part of definition, it also includes vaping devices, electronic cigarettes, regardless of the substance intended for inhalation, and they're all included underneath this ordinance. As explained during the work session, this ordinance is in conflict with state and federal law. The T21 law passed by the federal government increased the minimum age for tobacco products to 21, and the proposed ordinance change simply strikes out the reference to minors and those under the age of 18 and changes it to the age of 21. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, sir. Would the city clerk please read ordinance number 23006 by title only?
Yes, Your Honor. Proposed ordinance number 23-006 on first reading. An ordinance amending Title IX, Public Peace, Morals, and Welfare to revise Chapter 9.16, Offenses by or against minors, Section 9.16.030, Purchase, Use, or Possession of Tobacco by Minors Prohibited of the Riverton Municipal Code, and repealing all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict therewith and providing for an effective date.
Thank you. The chair would entertain a motion to open the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Councilman Peranto with the motion. We'll say that that was Councilwoman Cox with this.
It's louder.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. I vote aye. Motion passes. I declare the public hearing open. Hearing will be conducted in accordance with state statutes, other applicable laws. I'd ask those individuals wishing to address the council to approach the podium and identify yourself for the record. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to speak? There being no others to speak, the chair would entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved. Second.
Councilman Bailey with the motion, Councilwoman Borders with the second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
I vote aye. All opposed say nay. Motion passes. I declare the public hearing to be closed. The chair would entertain a motion to adopt ordinance number 23006 on first reading.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Councilman Larson, second by Councilwoman Cox. discussion? I will say that after we got done with our meeting last time when we were wanting to talk about Delta 8, Kratom, that kind of thing, I had Representative Ember Oakley reach out, and she said that they have ideas in the works from the Judiciary Committee at the state level regarding Delta 8. Considering that, and I think considering the recommendation from council and Mr. Butterfield, we had discussed somewhat the idea of maybe adding Delta 8 to the possess or use tobacco if you're under the age of 21. But I guess I just wanted to share that in terms of where efforts are going in, at the state level that they're discussing, and it's part of the interim topics for the Judiciary Committee for the House. The other thing I would note, the federal law restricts retailers from selling to people who are under the age of 21. State law, though, restricts possession or sell to people under the age of 21. So really, this is just making our ordinance and to comport with the state law as well as the federal retailer's law. That's everything I have to say. I'm sorry. So is there any other discussion or amendments on the ordinance? Are you there, Councilwoman Salisbury?
I am.
Just wanted to make sure, since you're the one who kind of started the discussion on a lot of this, so I just wanted to make sure you were present and hearing.
Yes, and I'm glad the state's addressing it too.
Say that again. You broke up a little.
Yes, and I'm happy that the state is addressing it as well.
Yes.
We'll see what comes of that.
Right. I agree. All right. All in favor of passage of ordinance number 23006 on first reading, say aye.
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 And I vote aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion passes. All right. Amended easement, Modelers Park. I feel like we were just here, but Community Development Director's report, please.
Your Honor, council members, yes, we were just here. On May 16th, we discussed an update to the Gilpatrick easement for the Modelers Park, where we were taking an existing revocable easement and we made a few language strikes and changed revocable to irrevocable, and that was basically it. And that was an extensive easement that had existed for a good duration of time. And after that new easement was unanimously approved, however, after further review, the Gilpatricks had some dispute with the new language in the easement as it presented unforeseen challenges to them and the buyer. And basically what that was in that original easement, it said there was a statement of it could be used for like use. And so the Gilpatricks' current easement and use is for construction use, for construction and material use. And the Modelers Park obviously does have a different intended use for traveling upon that. And there was a couple other small languages in there that added some confusion to how that easement would be portrayed in the future. It was ran through council, but it was not recorded. So what we done was we sat down with the Gilpatricks, myself, Mr. Butterfield, Kimberly Applegate, and Rick and Josephine sat down and discussed it a little bit. And we did kind of come to an agreement where we simplified some of that language, and we're representing that to you tonight. This easement is very similar to that easement was previously approved by the council, but has clear language related to rights and responsibilities of the parties involved. Staff and city's legal counsel support the new revised easement, and it is the recommendation that city council approve the 60-foot easement, drainage, irrigation, and utility easement to Rick and Josephine Gilpatrick as written in amended language.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. All right. Well, let me just make sure then, would we need a motion not only to approve this easement, but to void the previous action? Is that what we would need?
Your Honor, I do believe that that any new easement written over the same land would overwrite previous easements, so there would be no need to stricken any movement. And that was signed, voted on by council, but it was not recorded, so there's no recording change on that as well. So I believe an action of council tonight would overwrite any action of council previous.
Okay.
Why wasn't it recorded?
I don't know, Mr. Miller.
The day after the easement was signed by council, the Gilpatricks were meeting with their title agency, and that's when they discovered the issues that they had with it. And so we've been working on that since. So the mayor signed it after the May 16th council meeting, and then May 17th, we sat down with the Gilpatricks and started discussions about the language issues that they had when they met with their title agency.
Okay. All right. Well, the chair would entertain a motion to approve the easement as been presented for Gilpatrick's 60-foot access, drainage, irrigation, and utility easement.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Bailey, second by Councilwoman Borders, I should say Councilman Bailey, sorry. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. I vote aye. Motion passes. I will sign this right now so that I'm not the problem at all. How does that sound?
Much appreciated.
All right, and this is already signed by the Gilpatricks, and we're good to go.
And we will record it.
Yes. I hope so. Yes, Mr. Miller?
Yes, that will be recorded this week.
Thank you. Aerial applicator lease agreement, city administrator's report, please.
Thank you, Your Honor. We have several entities that operate out of the Central Wyoming Regional Airport airfield. Some of those are our crop dusters or aerial applicators. Before you tonight is a lease agreement for a company called Crop Dusters LLC, who actually has provided service in Fremont County and operated out of our airport under Airtime Aerial LLC. They've just evolved into a new company. Airtime Aerial, as reported in your packet, currently has a lease agreement which expires June 30th, 2023. Moving forward with Crop Dusters LLC, we want to establish a new lease agreement with them and set the terms for their operation out of the airfield, which are very similar to the terms that they had previously. The only difference is they want to operate out of a different location on the airfield, which is not a problem for airport staff or the airport board. And then they've also communicated that they would prefer to utilize their own fuel on the airfield. And to be consistent with how we handle other leases, we will charge a fuel flowage fee for them, and that's incorporated in this lease if they so choose to store and utilize their own fuel. The footprint of the lease is 8,943 square feet. The current rate for a type of ground lease like this is 18 cents per square foot. So the annual revenue generated by this lease is roughly $1,600. And then anything that's covered by the flowage fee would be on top of that, which is 5 cents per gallon. This lease has been proposed to the airport board. They were in favor of it, and staff recommends the city council approve the lease agreement as written and presented to you in your packet.
Thank you. The chair would entertain a motion to enter into a lease agreement with Crop Dusters LLC for ground lease space for Central Wyoming Regional Airport.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Councilman Pronto, second by Councilman Bailey. Any discussion?
Your Honor,
Yes, sir.
does this enter into any conflict with our current leasers of crop dusting at the airport?
Mr. Butterfield?
Your Honor, Councilman, no, it does not. And to that end, we have to provide an even level competitive field. And so if we allow one entity to operate out of the airfield, we have to allow another entity to operate out of the airfield. So we will have multiple crop dusters operating at Central Wyoming Regional, but we've had that for several years.
Okay.
Any other discussion or amendments? Appreciate your question, Councilman Larson. That was my question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I vote aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion passes. Bid award, building maintenance vehicle, public works directors. There's two S's in a row, and sometimes I get rid of one. Public Works Director's report, please.
Thank you, Your Honor and Council. Before you tonight is a request for a bid award for the new work truck for the Building Maintenance Department, which includes a 4x4 truck, which includes a snowplow. With the continuing supply chain issues and timelines for ordering, this award is pre-budget approval. The amount of the award requested is $59,880.50. If you recall, we budgeted in the upcoming budget $74,400 for the purchase. If awarded tonight, when the order bank's open, we can get that rolling, but we'll have to, it's obligating funds that haven't been officially obligated at this point. On the bright side, it is $14,519.50 under what we budgeted, so our recommendation would be to approve the award, so we pull the trigger on it when the order bank opens.
Thank you. And then we had just one bid then from Fremont Chevrolet, is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. The chair would entertain a motion to approve the purchase of one new 3/4 ton 4x4 work truck with plow from Fremont Chevrolet in the amount of $59,880.50.
So moved.
Second.
Councilman Larson with the motion, Councilwoman Cox with the second. Discussion? This isn't going to create any budget issues at all. I mean, we're going to have to pass the budget now with this amount. Or I guess we're going to have to pass it, I suppose, with the $74,400.
That's what's recommended in the budget right now. We'd probably drive our finance director nuts if we changed it. I'd prefer not to make her mad. I'm afraid of her.
I've found it to be a good practice not to make the person who signs the checks mad.
Reasonable.
All right. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I vote aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion passes.
Is this a harbinger of future weather to come?
I don't know. We'll see.
All our bids be low. Not willing to bet any money on it.
You're not gonna willing to bet on that? Wonder what the over-under is on that.
Yeah.
All right, right-of-way use agreement, Advanced Communication Technologies. What is up with me missing those S's? Advanced Communications Technologies, Inc. City Administrator's report, please.
Thank you, Your Honor. The agreement that is included in your packet is here for you to review, and we recommend the approval of it. This is for Advanced Communication Technologies, but they will be doing business as Range Telephone Cooperative. We're just going to say Range from here on out. Range is a local exchange carrier. There's a little bit of a history of their company in your packet. However, Range includes, through ACT or Advanced Communications Technologies, several companies, and they provide telecommunication services in our region. What they propose to do is install a transmission line through the corporate boundary of Riverton. This will provide service really across the state. It's a large transmission line. We began negotiations with Range really almost a year ago when Mr. Tolstead was here. And one of the points that we wanted to ensure we were looking into was whether or not a franchise agreement was appropriate or another type of agreement. We quickly learned and decided that a franchise agreement does not make the best sense in this instance, because franchise agreements allow the use of all of the city rights of way for the telecommunication provider or utility provider. in the instance of range, they're not going to be providing local service, so there won't be service provisions to our Riverton residents. And they're really not installing infrastructure except for a very small portion of our right-of-way. So we forewent the idea of entering a franchise agreement with this company and instead explored the option of a right-of-way use agreement. This is something that the city of Casper also does for similar type projects. We've worked through our local legal representation, and Range has also reviewed the agreement from their legal standpoint, and we are at terms for the use of the right-of-way that they've proposed for their alignment, and also the fees associated therewith. There is an upfront installation fee of $1.52 per square foot, and then there's an annual use fee thereafter of 35 cents per square foot. At an approximate, right now they're looking at just under 2,800 linear feet that they would like to utilize the right-of-way for this transmission line. At that install fee of $1.52, that would generate just a little over $4,200 in revenue. For the annual fee, what we would like to do is include this area that's proposed, but also bring in an area of town that is currently served, but not under a right-of-way use agreement. Several years ago, Range received a permit to install some telecommunication infrastructure. They received a building permit for that, but we never issued a right-of-way use agreement. So we're going to correct that with this agreement. They're in agreement with the terms of it, and so moving forward, the annual fee for the roughly 2,800 linear feet of the new installation, but then also about 5,300 feet of the existing infrastructure will be paid for at 35 cents a linear foot, for a total of roughly $2,800 in revenue. The term of the agreement is for 5 years with an option to renew for another 5 years, and then we would re-examine the right-of-way use agreement. There are several other terms related to the use of the right-of-way, and that's outlined in your packet, and I won't go through each one of them, but would be happy to stand for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Butterfield. Chair would entertain a motion to approve a right-of-way use agreement between the City of Riverton and Advanced Communications Technology, Inc., doing business as Range, relating to telecommunication facilities located in city right-of-ways.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Councilman Larson, second by Councilman Bailey. Discussion or amendments? What's the, I guess in terms of the amount of money that's being paid to the city, I imagine the difference between a right-of-way use agreement and a franchise agreement is one of the biggest reasons this has been a kind of sticking point.
Your Honor, the compensation, we've tried to be somewhat similar to what we would charge for a franchise agreement, but it's not really an equitable comparison because franchise agreements are oftentimes done by percentage as well. One of the points that we needed to work through in our negotiations was their ability to lease their infrastructure to another entity. In our franchise agreements, we put in verbiage that states if a franchisee sublets some of their infrastructure and generates revenue from that, then the city is entitled to a certain percentage of that revenue. In the instance of Range or ACT, their business model is a little bit different than, let's say, another utility provider like a power company that really only provides the service related to their specific utility. And if they sublet any of their space on a pole or any of their conduit, it would be very easy to quantify. Range is different in the sense that their business model is really to carry other entities across their fiber network. And so when we started negotiating a percentage fee of any subleases, it became a point that needed to be worked through, one from a complexity standpoint and a fairness standpoint. They have service providers that aren't even within the state of Wyoming that would run through that 2,700 feet of Riverton, and calculating a fair percentage of revenue on that was more challenging than I think was able to be negotiated. So we, in the end, higher per-foot fee for their use of our right-of-way.
So with other like companies, I guess, going forward, we've got precedents that we would be using right-of-way rather than a franchise agreement. Is that, I mean, if we would be doing fiber, for example?
Your Honor, to answer your question, I think we have precedents in both directions. It would depend on the type of service the utility company wants to provide. So if they're planning on providing local service and they would need a significant amount of our rights of way, then a franchise agreement would make a lot of sense for like a cable company or a power company. In the instance of a company wanting to install a transmission line that they wouldn't provide local service and they were really only occupying a set limited amount of our right-of-way, we could use the right-of-way use agreement.
Okay. Just wanted to get a little bit more, tease out the differences there, and I guess make sure that if we're going to be doing this, we're not setting precedents that we're going to be doing it in all instances, but it'd be on a case-by-case basis. Councilman Larson?
But there's no revenue. They're not, like the power companies, when we pay power, we're consuming that product here in Riverton, and there's a fee on that. But they're not generating any revenue through Riverton.
They are.
Are they?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Who are they connected to?
Well, they're part of the unified network, which provides services to school districts and CWC and other entities. So it's part of a bigger scope. But they're not selling it to.
Well, they're not selling it to the public, but how do you tax CWC in the school district? You're just taxing yourself twice.
True, they're a utility, and the state pays many of those fees to them as a provider of services.
Okay.
But it's not. So it gets kind of complex. I think the easiest way is to move forward this way because they're not providing services to every business in town or every user in town. There are some select connection points through the unified network.
But it is a burden. It does, I mean, the usage does represent a burden on the network.
Oh, absolutely it does.
It's just not something that, generally speaking,
it would
you
be
would
difficult
be sitting
to
there
quantify.
and measuring on a whatever basis, like megabits per second or whatever, that you're going to sit there and say they're using this much at this time and we're going to quantify it.
Right. So it used to be easier in the terms of radio towers. So like if you're going to Rock Springs, just before, well, anytime you see a tower that has just a lot of different antennas on it, the providers are typically leasing that space and paying based on what gets transmitted through that tower. So in those cases where you're talking radio, it's kind of like this radio can support X amount of bandwidth, so they get paid based on that bandwidth. With fiber, it's kind of exponential and difficult to quantify. So it's a different medium, and therefore it's much broader.
Broadband is broader.
Yes, sir.
Who'd have thunk?
As broad as it can be in Riverton, Wyoming.
Your Honor.
Yes, sir.
If I may, we do have a provision in this agreement that if Range provides more local service, then they would be required to enter a franchise agreement. So this agreement would expire on its own terms, and it would transition to a franchise agreement. As many of you are aware, franchise agreements are regulated by federal and state law. One thing that we have to be very cautious of as a municipality is whether our franchise agreements are equitable and fair across the board. And so we do have current franchise agreements and franchisees, and once this entity transitions, we would be required to propose a franchise agreement that's very similar to the ones that we currently have.
Well, and I guess that's the reason why I'm asking the question, because I want to make sure that what we're doing is going to be something that's going to be fair and equitable and is going to be perceived as such, and recognizing the differences between Range versus other folks that do have a franchise agreement, I think is important in terms of why we're treating it differently.
We could hope that it would broaden out.
Yes.
Because business would be utilizing it. So that's good that we've got both ends.
I think Mr. Butterfield brings up an interesting point that, you know, the scope of what we're agreeing to here is pretty narrow, knowing that they have some connection points. But if they did broaden their business model into something that was more designed around providing services to other entities, then of course that transition period would make sense, or that transition to a different contract would make a lot of sense. But based on what this is and the connections that they have, it makes sense to go this route.
All right. Well, I appreciate all the discussion, and if there's any other discussion or amendments? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
I vote aye. Any opposed say nay. Motion passes. Council committee reports, council members roundtable. How about we start with you, Councilwoman Salisbury, since you're on the phone?
Okay, thank you. I want to start by thanking Councilwoman Cox and her sons and the Legion baseball team for helping out the Chamber and the Wind River Heritage Center. We went down there before the community event, and it had weeds and tall grass and everything, and I called Councilwoman Cox, and she got a hold of the team, and they came down to support the community and cleaned it all up. So we really appreciate their team providing some community service to the community, and I hope people get out and support the team and go to their games. And so I wanted to start with that. I've been to several meetings with the Chamber and the Heritage, which is kind of all together now. We do have a new board president, James Bunker. We've put nominations out for to replace a couple of positions that are expiring. And we've kind of just refocused to get everything in order. We have a executive director job or position announcement out. We're hoping to replace soon. And I just want to thank Bethany Baldas. She took on a lot more than she signed up for with losing one of our chamber director, and she's put in a lot of time, sweat, and tears, and really appreciate all the work she's put in as the past year president. That's it.
Thank you very much. As somebody who has also been helped out by Councilwoman Cox's sons, they're good workers. They get it done, and they do it they volunteer. We had a booth once, and I'm sorry to get off tangent, but I just want to say this. We had a booth once at events. I don't remember what it was, and my wife was carrying a table or something, and they just jumped in and they were helping out. So I appreciate them, and of course I think the other young men that we're helping out deserve recognition too. So thank you for that, Councilwoman Salisbury. Councilman Paranto.
And just, thank you, Your Honor. I just kind of wanted to keep the discussion moving, and it's kind of relevant in talking about RT and ACT that our U.S. legislature passed through the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act about $42.5 billion to go towards state and federal broadband funding. Now, that's a boatload of money, and that's part of the infrastructure component, but this $42.5 billion is specific to broadband. And what of that $42.5 billion, Wyoming may see between $100 and $200 million. So as we talk about various internet and broadband providers and their infrastructure in communities throughout the state of Wyoming and the U.S., it's important to note that a lot of that may shift, and the services they provide today may expand into other areas as this particular broadband expansion moves forward. So it makes sense that, and I don't know if that was part of the discussions that Kyle had with ACT as well, but this is coming down the pike, and I think everybody's going to jump on this bandwagon. First, because there's a lot of money, but secondly, or maybe firstly, there's a lot of need. And when you look at the need in states like Wyoming, where we're really underserved, and the people who live not far outside of Riverton are very underserved, and in some places, even in Riverton, we're underserved. So of this $100, $200 million that will come to the state of Wyoming, the intent is to provide high-speed internet. And what is high-speed? Typically, kind of at the minimum level, it's 25 megabits down and 3 megabits up. And then, of course, anything faster than that kind of hits different tiers. So this isn't just for last-mile funding, meaning fiber to everybody's house, because obviously you can't can't pay for that. I heard a number today, and Mike might help me with this, but didn't they say, I think it was Du Bois Telephone that said it cost $6,500 to put fiber to a house? Is that what she said?
$65,000.
$65,000.
Per household unit is the average cost of infrastructure for, and that's ranges anywhere from $50,000 to $75,000 in the state of Wyoming per individual household unit.
So this $100 to $200 million is not going to take us very far. So really, the intent of it isn't to put fiber to every household, but it's to improve the infrastructure throughout the state. And we had previous legislature, Wyoming legislature, also enacted rules that if you put in broadband, if you're putting in conduit along our highway systems, you also have to accommodate other providers and allow them to put either fiber in your conduits, or you have to put in additional conduits in the ground to accommodate their fiber as well. So pros and cons there, but this is a really interesting prospect, and I see it come into fruition probably by like 2025 or so. That's when that funding will actually get allocated. But kind of a big deal. And also, to continue my talking, sorry, I can't shut up, I guess. But last night we did have the Fremont County School District 25 Rec Board meeting where we approved bills and discussed, we've kind of had a lack of funding invoices. So those people who were actually approved for funding just haven't submitted invoices yet. So we don't know if they just haven't moved forward with the projects that they were going to do. But hopefully that we see that starting to filter in. Our next meeting will be July 17th instead of the 3rd, because the 3rd of July seemed like an awkward day to have that. So Wednesday, it'll be the 17th. There were some scheduling conflicts for the 10th. And with that, Your Honor, that's it.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Councilwoman Borders.
Your Honor, the only committee meeting I've had was this evening at Finance Committee, and we talked about that earlier. So I wanted to go over, I've been remiss in mentioning WYO Today, Ernie. So I'm on that site right now, and the first thing I want to mention is the Northern Arapaho Tour Rodeo that starts this Friday and goes through Sunday. It's a nationally qualifying event for the National Finals Rodeo. There's going to be some really good action, and I encourage people to go down there and check it out. We've also got a lot of other things going on. I mean, I could sit here and read this and it would take probably an hour, and I don't think we want to do that. So I'll just go over some highlights. Let's see, we've got a kindness festival from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. on Friday, June 2nd. Not sure exactly what all that consists of, but that sounds interesting. We've got the first Friday at Fremont County Museums. Kids are free with a paying adult, and there's a lot of cool stuff to look at in the museum. The Fremont County Spring Spectacular at the fairgrounds. Let's see, that was this last weekend. I'm sorry, I'm looking at the wrong weekend. Let's see. Eastern Shoshone Tribe Summer Foods Program begins August 11th. And on that note, I believe that the school is providing lunches. Don't have a lot of details. Do you have some details on
Pull
that?
that up, yeah.
I just heard about that on the radio today.
That's where I heard it. I don't catch all the
listening to
details.
the same station.
Yeah, we must be. Wonder if Ernie knows about that one. So while Lindsay looks that up, I also want to mention GoRiverton.com. There's a lot of good information on there. Lots of events going on. So I encourage you to go check that out. And that's about all I've got.
Sounds good.
Let me pull that up.
Councilwoman Cox, why don't you give your report and then you can tell us what you found out, or do you need more time to find it?
Well, it's not letting me pull up that website for my cheat, so I'll maybe mention that later on. But it is on our Fremont 25 page if people need more information on that. Since our last meeting, I attended the senior endowment meeting last week with Mia, and everything's running smoothly there right now, so that's good. I missed the rec board meeting because I was watching baseball. That's the season I'm in right now, so I like to thank Councilwoman Salisbury. The boys are trying to give back to the community that helps support them. It's, you know, a volunteer league, and so we appreciate all of our sponsors, and we are trying to get these boys to get out and work for it a little bit this year. So their next home game is actually June 12th against Lander. So if you want to come up and support them, that's when they'll be on our home field. Other than that, they're mostly gone in June. So I think that's it since our last meeting.
Thank you. Councilman Bailey.
Okay, thank you, Your Honor. I enjoyed going and being at the Daughters of the American Revolution meeting to present them with their proclamation in your stead while you were gone. And so I had a nice lunch and presented that to them, and they were very thankful and even sent me a little thank you card. So that was awesome.
They sent me one too, even though I didn't show up. So.
Thanks for not coming, huh?
That's exactly what it said.
And I was trying to think, there was something else. Oh, I got to also be on the radio, since you were gone, I got to be on the radio show with Administrator Butterfield, and we went over the agenda and stuff, and so, again, that was a good experience. And Ernie didn't give me any really hard questions or anything, so I did good, so. And that's about all I have.
Well, I appreciate you doing that. And
You bet.
Mondays, I'm not able to be there for the radio. I've spoken about that with Ernie, and so I've had very willing participation by Mr. Bailey, and then I think 2 weeks from now, Ms. Councilwoman Borders was willing to step in, so I appreciate that from both of you. I think it's good to hear from somebody besides me.
Mm-hmm.
Councilman Larson.
The roads, I haven't had any meetings I attended. We've already hashed over closers and haulage, but the roads appear to be being filled with lots of blacktop, which I'm happy about. The Main Street has been worked on by the parks people, and that looks nice. Nice for a lot of people that are driving through Riverton. The other thing that looks nice is I saw the city sweeper out and cleaning up all the sand that we tried to stop the sliding on thick snow last winter. And that looks nice, and so my commend to the streets sweepers and the people that maintain the highways. Man, it's a big turnaround from January and February to the present time. We have quite a bit of water stored in the city's storage there on 16th East, which is going in. And if anybody hasn't driven by the bridge to see the Big Wind River and the Little Wind River, we have a lot of water going by. So if you were a polluter, now's the time to pollute. I know, and the secret to pollution is dilution, but in all honesty, we don't have the problems that Hudson and Lander have, which are very fortunate, because that amount of water just raises heck. But kudos to the city for keeping the highways going, looking really nice, and those divided parts, whether you're for or against them, doesn't matter. They're clean, they look nice, they're sharp, and makes the city really be presentable to our spring customers. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Larson. All right, Mr. Butterfield.
Thank you, Your Honor. A few things to make note of. Just a reminder that next week we will be having our public hearing and adoption of the fiscal year 24 budget. That will be at 7 p.m. And then, as a reminder, I'll also be attending the WHAM conference the second half of this week, which will be in Cody, and look forward to learning a little bit there and networking, and I'll be sure to vote the way that you want when it comes our turn to vote. This Friday, you may have seen published, but there's a select legislative committee meeting on the task force that is looking into the option of building a state office building here in Riverton. The meeting will be at CWC and open to the public, so I encourage you or anybody else to attend, as that, I think, would be a very positive thing for the city of Riverton as the legislature looks to move forward.
And what time is that, and do you know where it is at CWC?
Your Honor, I'd have to look that up. I know it starts in the morning and it runs till early afternoon, but I want to make sure I give you the right reference there.
8 o'clock? 9. Oh, 9 o'clock. Thank you, Mr. Butterfield.
You know, Ernie's a good man. He's always there for the assist.
Sorry to interrupt. Carry on. I'm sorry.
That's very good. I also wanted to highlight that we do have 2 staff members attending a federal summit about grant writing and the federal dollars that will be made available and have been made available through the infrastructure law. Ms. Mia Harris and Mr. Brendan Toman are going to be going and representing the city. This is something that Senator Lummis is sponsoring, and then also Governor Gordon is sponsoring. So this is a great opportunity for us as a city to learn more about federal grant processes and put a better foot forward than what we already do as we apply for federal grants. I want to say thank you to our committee that put on the employee luncheon this last Friday. It was a great opportunity for the city of Riverton to get together and share a meal and hopefully enjoy each other's company, meet some new people. And I just want to say we have a wonderful staff, and I think they all ride for the brand. And even when things are challenging, whether that's due to seasonal restrictions or even being restricted with short staffing levels, our team always responds, and I'm just so grateful for the service they provide. The last thing I'll make note of is I want to highlight our Public Works Department. During the Public Works Week, they put on a truck show out in front of City Hall, and if you didn't get an opportunity to see that, it was a lot of fun. I know my 2-year-old didn't want to go home, and he, quote, drove each of the pieces of equipment that were parked in our parking lot. So thanks to the Public Works Department for doing that. And then, Your Honor, if it's okay, I would like to turn the time to Mr. Eggleston. As reported in your weekly report, he is exploring a grant opportunity for electronic charging stations, and I think it'd be appropriate to maybe just go through some of the details of that. Brian was tasked to look at this grant opportunity in very short order, and he's done a lot of work, and we're going to do everything we can to meet the grant deadline, which is coming up next week. And so I think it's appropriate that we bring you up to speed, if that's okay.
Yes, thank you. Mr. Eggleston, tell us more about
Thank you, Your Honor and
that.
Council. This is part of the charging and fueling infrastructure law. It's also part of the bill grant. It provides money for community and corridor charging facilities. Not just charging facilities, it's alternative fuels like natural gas, propane, what have you. The grant's not intended to be in direct competition with anybody, and we're not seeking anything or even looking at the hydrogen, propane, or natural gas vehicles. We were approached by Patrick Lawson with Wild West Electric Vehicles. He was requesting that we sponsor a grant to add charging facilities in the city of Riverton that would be available to the traveling public moving through the city. Originally proposing a site up at Central Wyoming Regional Airport where he could offer charging and also charge long-term passengers, maintain their vehicles up there, but he also wanted to establish potentially a rental business for electric vehicles. And we also identified another location that would be potentially good for people traveling through, which would be the Riverton City parking lot, City Hall parking lot, which would be rapid chargers, which would allow people to maybe stop in, get a bite to eat, plug their car in, and keep on going to Yellowstone National Park. The grant itself is unlike the RAISE grant, where I had some idea about building roads and stuff like that. I had no idea on electric vehicles or what the requirements were there, so it was a crash course trying to get smart on it. Optimistically, the grant will be submitted on time. I'm just wrapping up a few details in the narrative. It's about ready to go. I'm just giving it a second perusal. It's a very competitive grant. There's 700 million total authorized for the corridor, which in Wyoming, the corridors are interstate highways. And then 350 million authorized for the community corridor, or the community pathways, which Riverton would qualify for that. Very high on rural areas, minority-owned businesses, tribally owned businesses, and Wild West EV does qualify for that. The city would be, in theory, the sponsor for the grant. However, we would lease space to Wild West EV to construct and operate those fueling stations. As part of that, Wild West EV is offering to provide the match, the 20% match for that grant, which is about $120,000 based on the latest figures I have. Like I say, it's very competitive. We'll submit it. We'll see where we fall, but that's basically it in a nutshell.
I guess, and ironically enough, I was at the broadband, well, the last 5 minutes of the broadband meeting today. I had a chance to speak with Mr. Lawson, and I was asking about this, and he said, so number one, we're talking about fast charging, so any electric vehicle being able to be charged in about a half an hour. That'd be not just Teslas, but anything else as well. And then number two, and this was a good point that he made, this isn't going to be something that would be used by people here so much, because if you had an electric vehicle and you live in Riverton, you're going to charge it at your home or your place of work or wherever. But would be really tourism. This would be something that would benefit tourists, people that are coming through Riverton, and the time that it takes to charge is just about a good amount of time to go get some food. And so I think it can be really beneficial to be able to add into the infrastructure that we have. I know there's different opinions on electric vehicles, and I understand where people come from, but we're not talking about the city having any money that we're going to have to pay for this. He's saying that he's going to cover everything that he's going to have to under the grant. And in fact, if we would be leasing the space, it would be bringing in revenue to the city.
Correct.
So,
This, just so we're 100% forthright with this grant, it's a pay-as-you-use type of grant. The city would have to fund it and then be reimbursed. So obviously there's nothing in the budget to support that now. If we were successful in gaining the grant, we'd have to revisit that issue.
right. Well, thank you, Mr. Eggleston and Mr. Butterfield. Anything else to add, Mr. Butterfield?
No, I do want to say thank you to Brian for picking this up in very short order and for getting smart on it. I think it's important to note that we have to be very careful as a public entity when partnering with private enterprise and then also seeking federal dollars for a private enterprise to operate on public ground. And that's something we're very aware of and cognizant of. Should this move forward, we would need to structure a lease agreement with Wild West EV that is equitable and fair, especially since we would be sponsoring a grant that would directly and positively impact the infrastructure he would lease at the airport or at City Hall. So those are things that we are cognizant of and paying attention to. And also, as Brian's juggled quite a few balls on this grant, doing it in quick succession, but we hope to have some of these details prepared to present back to you via lease agreement, and then also to formally talk about the grant as well.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Yes, sir.
I guess the other thing that I was thinking about on this is, again, if we're going to start leasing public property for private enterprise, we need to make sure that we're being that
Compensated.
we set a precedent of what we're going to charge, what we're going to allow, what the time periods are. You know, if the lease is broken, what do they do with the permanent equipment that they've installed on public property? You know, would it have to be removed? You know, and then, of course, obviously, with grants, we have responsibilities to perform with those grants, that if, you know, we get halfway through the project and something doesn't work and the city's gonna be stuck in the middle. And so I guess I would just express caution. And it doesn't matter what kind of project it is, it's sort of the same. You know, if somebody was gonna wanna build a coffee shop on city property and bring utilities and all that kind of stuff, there would be a cost of undoing it if they failed or decided to leave. So I think we just have to be careful that we cover all our bases, and I'm sure you guys have looked thoroughly at it, but that's my main concern. When you start mixing public and private, it gets interesting.
I agree. I mean, we've got, we lease things at the airport regularly. We've got a precedence for that, but we don't always have a precedence for everything, such as
This.
bandwidth, you know, and so we're trying to figure that out and what's appropriate, franchise versus a right-of-way agreement, and so you're right, we've got to make sure whatever the city does, it's even-handed.
Right.
I guess that's the point, and that we're not sitting there just trying to be picking the winners and having that be some arbitrary thing, but that we're trying to do things that are going to benefit the community in an even-handed way.
Yep.
I appreciate that reminder.
I was going to mention too, there are some municipalities in Utah, for instance, that the cities themselves actually provide charging stations at either no or little cost, and the city owns it. But that ends up being kind of a whole different discussion at, you know, what point is the city now also a utility selling services and competing with other entities that might want to charge for those services. So it is an interesting conversation. So a lot of times you end up seeing private businesses doing it on private property, and that makes some sense too.
Well, that's just always what's difficult. You sit there and if you say the city's gonna start doing this or a government entity's gonna do it, then it's like, okay, well, you're doing something that a private entity should be doing.
Yeah.
And if there's any support that's shown to any one private entity, then you start having people concerned about competition, rightfully so.
It's difficult to compete with the city.
Yeah. All right. Well, I've been on vacation for the last few weeks. I was able to see the great state of Missouri, and when I came home, I was very glad to not be in Missouri anymore. It was a nice place to visit, but I wouldn't want to live there. I'm glad there's people that like to live there. Good on them. But I had a good time, and it was very nice to be able to get away. I was very pleasantly, I shouldn't say pleasantly surprised, but I was very glad to see things were still in working order when I came back. We have very good city staff, very good city council that's been very willing to assist, and I've appreciated them stepping up. Even things as simple as the DAR proclamation, those sort of things, I appreciate it, and I think we've got good people that are willing to serve the city in a lot of different ways. So, that being said, I did not attend meetings because I wasn't here. I did have a chance to visit a little bit with our kind of thrown together group talking about homelessness in Riverton by phone or by Zoom. That was a good opportunity. We've got some different things that have been discussed. And it's right now just so early on that there's really not much to report other than one of the big things that we've been talking about is, well, for one thing, something that's been a concern is just how much we're having to spend on jailing individuals and what other solutions or opportunities we have besides basically costing the taxpayers thousands, tens of thousands of dollars for room and board for individuals who have violated the law, and just thinking of different ways we can approach that problem. And that's been an ongoing conversation that started well before I began my tenure on the city council or as mayor, and it's going to probably continue for many years to come. But at least we're trying to talk about it and figure out ideas. So that's really what I've had the opportunity to attend. We do have an executive session regarding personnel and potential litigation. So I would entertain a motion to convene in an executive session for the purpose of personnel in accordance with Wyoming Statute 164405A2 or in accordance with Wyoming Statute 164405A10, and also regarding litigation in accordance with Wyoming Statute 16405A3.
Your Honor, before we do this,
Yes,
I just wanted to share the information that we found on the Fremont County, Fremont School District 25. They're offering breakfast and lunch every day. Riverton High School, Willow Creek, Ash Grove, and the middle school are all June 5th through the 9th. The middle school's through the 29th. Aspen is going to be in July. And one thing that I thought was really neat is adults can go with their children and they can also eat. They do have to pay $2.45 for breakfast, and lunch is $4. But for the kids, it's free. So if you're hungry, if you're having a hard time stretching your budget, that's available. They also do have a food truck as well that is at CWC. They've got one at Rendezvous and then JC Park. So that's for the month of June, and then we'll revisit this. But that was on the food service portion of the website for School District 25.
Pretty easy to get to that. I found it to just go to the School District 25 webpage, and it's a yellow graphic there on the left of the webpage. So thank you, Councilwoman Borders. All right, do we have a motion considering executive session for the purpose of personnel and litigation?
So moved.
Second.
Councilman Larson with the motion, Councilman Bailey with the second. Any discussion on that motion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
I vote aye. All opposed say nay. Motion passes. We stand convened into executive session at 8:22 p.m. Chair would invite Mr. Butterfield and Ms. Watson to attend the executive session. Are we going to be able to have Councilwoman Salisbury attend also by phone? Okay. We'll work that out, Christie.
Sounds good. Should I hang up and you'll call me back, or?
Yes, please hang up and try your call.
Okay.
No, we'll call you.
Okay. Thanks.
Probably not. And
Hello?
if you get in a position where you
Christie, we're back in.
You're back. Okay.
get them home. Yeah, I'm good with everything, I think. So,
All right.
City Council needs new chairs.
Yeah.
All right, I would entertain a motion to reconvene into regular session.
So moved.
Second?
Motion by Councilwoman Cox, second by Councilman Larson. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed, say nay. Motion passes. The regular session of the City Council is reconvened at 9:20 PM. Do we have any action items from the executive session?
Your Honor, I move that we appoint Mia Harris as the Administrative Services Director and direct staff to prepare a contract to that end.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilman Peranto, second by Councilwoman Cox. Any discussion or amendments? Does that fill your needs, Mr. Butterfield?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. I feel kind of weird doing this when Mia's not here. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I vote aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion passes. I'd entertain a motion to adjourn the regular council meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Councilman Larson, second by Councilwoman Borders. All in favor, say aye.
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 I vote aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion passes. We are adjourned at 9:21 PM. Thank you.